Hello, welcome back. A few viewer asked me to comment on my view of the comic market in general. I think it was Brent and at least one other person, but thanks for the question. This is a fairly um, common debated topics for most collectors, and often difficult to talk about, because in general, most of us do not like to lose money. Um, it's hard to approach this hobby without disregarding the monetary aspect of it. You know, uh, sure, when I was younger and started to collect, I certainly didn't care or didn't pay much attention to it, and I really didn't pay much attention to the monetary value of the books until probably I would say almost 20 years later. I mean, from 81 to about year 2000. I was happy collecting, buying, and really, you know, didn't worry much about what the value is, because I did not buy a lot of back issue yet. I bought a handful of John Byrne X-Men. I had a handful of Silver Age, but once 1999, 2000, and eBay came around, and I had money, and I started to buy a lot of Silver Age back issue. That's when I start to think more about, gee, what am I spending my money on? Was it a big waste of money or not? And it started to creep into my mindset since 1999, roughly. But before we go further about money and the future market of comic books, the one thing that I want to touch upon is, like many things in life, demand and supplies dictate what something is worth. Okay, I hear this common word used all the time: rare, scarce, and I'm not a big fan of those two words. Just because something is rare does not mean it's worth anything. You have to separate the term rare. Is if an item exists and nobody wants it, does it matter if it's one of a kind? So rarity, scarcity really have less meaning to its ultimate value compared to the demand. Okay, so one of the phenomenon that happened with the emergence of CGC in the past 13 years is the skyrocket price of high grade books. I think everyone agree that if you follow CGC since 2000, you notice that many of the books that was 9.6 or 9.8 went for crazy money, and eventually they start to come down in prices, and a lot of people that bought 9.8 bronze slabs in 2000 through 2007 most likely lost money, because back then X-Men 94 9.8 may have one or two copies. It was rare, scarce, and there was a lot more people that want the nicest copy. So when that happened, the dynamic of the market allow price to rise, and whoever it is can outbid the other guy or the other collector will get the book. But over time, you know, for the past 4 or 5 years, the number of high-grade copies of many books, not just bronze, you're talking Silver Age, you name it, copper, have blown up because there are just so many books out there that have not been slabbed yet. You know, just because, 10 years ago only one copy of X-Men 94 exists in 9.8 does not mean that that's the only copy. It's the only copy that was sent to CGC as of that date. I don't recall what the exact price was, but I believe the very first X-Men 9.4, the very first X-Men 94 that was graded 9.8 was sold for something like $25,000, something crazy, okay? And now it can be had for less than half that, a lot less than half that. Another example, New Mutant 98. 3 years ago, the first 9.9 copy surfaced, and the person who bought it paid $12,000 so that he can have the very highest, best looking copy of New Mutant 98. It's his money, he can do whatever he wants with it, but as of today, I believe there is 4 or 5 9.9 copies out there, and I think the last one sold for like 4,000 or around 4,000 to 5,000. So as you can see, as the supplies increases, the demand is never enough to soak up that supply. Sure, when there was one copy of New Mutant 98, grade 9.9, and 4 or 5 people want it. They fought for it, they bid up to 12,000, that was it. But once you remove one player out of the mix, the next one sold for less than 10,000, and then that one guy go away, that one collector go away, and then the next copy come up, now you have 2 or 3 left, and it becomes 6,000, and then it becomes 5,000. So if more copies surface, it will keep going lower. That's just the way it is, because there's a lot of collectors. The majority of the collectors out there don't mind spending a few $100 here and there, but once you start to cross the thousands and tens of thousands, the pool of potential buyer decrease significantly. Same thing with even mega keys, okay, like Amazing Fantasy 15. But before I go into that area of the market, I want to talk about the supplies. If you go to the Comic-Con website, I will keep another link to this video below. You notice that for the statistic that they provide books that was printed and then paid circulation, and often there are hundreds, if not 200,000 of certain issue that was not paid. Okay, years ago when they produced books, they print a lot of books. Some was damaged or didn't meet the quality control, so they were never sent out. But then, prior to the mid 70s, you have they can send 500 books to a shop and to a drugstore or whatever it is, and after a few months, when they couldn't sell everything, they can return them. So you have a lot of books that was returned, a lot of books that was sit in the warehouse that was never shipped out, sit in boxes, and over the years, those books that sit in the warehouse that was collecting dust was discovered and distributed as back issues in many occasions. So you have an explosion of some of the books that, a lot of time when you see like a Silver Age books that look like it's newsstand fresh, Some of them is because they are newsstand fresh, because they were never taken out of a box, put in a shelf anywhere for decades. They were discovered in warehouses, distribution centers, things like that. So that's why they maintain the quality that they did over 20, 30 years. I remember even maybe 3 or 4 years ago on eBay, there was a seller on eBay that was selling bulk warehouse discoveries. Sometime he sold a lot of different things, but there was a few time where I saw him list an entire box, big box of undistributed Wolverine one, the limited series that Frank Miller did, unopened, the whole case inside is like, I think it's like 400 books. It was a big, square kind of container that was like at least 2 by 2 by 2 feet, and it was unopened. And who knows how many 9.8 or 9.6 limited Wolverine issue is in that one box. And I can't remember what he was asking for it, but I remember I was tempted to buy it and see how many 9.8 I can get out of it, but that was a couple years ago. But that is the kind of things that I think a lot of collectors need to take into consideration, especially for any books that are considered hard or rare or scarce.